Okay, so we're going to talk about ski helmets again. What am I letting myself in for? Do you like 150 days of winter?
Let's do this.
To geek the hell out. Okay, so back in season 3, I decided to make a video on the spur of the moment while riding up a chairlift. This turned out to be one of the most controversial videos on my channel, judging by, of course, the comments and the like to dislike ratio. I don't regret making that video. However, 5 years later, I want to make the same video, but with a lot more research into ski helmets in general. Now, don't get me wrong, this video will probably provoke the same level of ire as the first one, but at least this will have more effort made in its production. Now, off the bat, once again, I am not trying to validate why I don't wear a helmet while skiing. That is my choice. However, I want to show how I saw helmet use when I grew up skiing in the 70s and then in the 90s. So generally, when you talk about helmets and skiing, you think back to a simpler time when ski technology was much slower, and so the rationale that helmets for casual skiers were not needed. Watch any ski film from the 60s and you'll see just that. If we look at ski races from that period, it was slightly different. Back in the 60s, ski racers in downhill were the only ones to wear any sort of protection. However, back then, ski helmet technology was playing catch-up. Back in the 1960s Olympics, Jean Varnet wore this rather fetching leather helmet, which probably provided as much protection as a wet towel. About that time, Americans favored a hard shell helmet designed by Bell using a technology called Top Tech. After a Canadian skier died in the 1960s Olympics after hitting his head on a rock, hard shell helmets were compulsory. It is unfortunate that it takes tragedy to inspire safety measures to be embraced, but that is the same with all sports. The next generation of helmets made of fiberglass with several different types of padding in the inside. These were bulky and heavy, but offered good protection, but were uncomfortable. Another problem was also finding well-fitting goggles to go with these helmets. That brings us to the 70s. And for the first time, helmet manufacturers really broke away from using helmets designed for motorsport. Bell were able to reduce the gauge and weight of their fiberglass shell and came up with the SR1. SR stood for ski racing, and it was the first ski-specific helmet produced in the United States. Meanwhile, over in Europe, Bari, Uvex, and Carrera designed the first ABS shell ski helmets. ABS stood for acrylonitrile butadiene styrene, and this synthetic rubber helmet material was tougher and lighter than fiberglass, giving these European helmets a real advantage over their US made models. You might say that in the past, ski technology was much slower, and only recently has skiing become faster. I use ski races as an example, as they go even faster than you or I. If we choose the slowest of all alpine skiing disciplines, slalom. Before the 80s, slalom skiers didn't have the luxury of competing with spring-loaded poles, which nowadays can be knocked away with hand and leg guards. As you can see, they had to ski around the bamboo poles so as not to be assaulted by their rigidity. But despite this danger, no one wore a helmet. Now, I have never been hit by either a spring pole or by a rigid bamboo pole. Well, there was that one time in boarding school. However, I imagine neither is very pleasant. Now, moving on to the 90s, and despite all these advances in helmet technology, it's important to point out that helmets weren't compulsory for any competition except downhill and Super G. Giant slalom skiers, for a while, that's 2 levels down from downhill, can be seen competing in the 1988 Olympics with only a beanie or a headband. in 1992, watching one of the greatest comebacks of all time as Alberto Tomba came back from 13th in the first run of the slalom to finish second on the podium. Of the 12 skiers above him, I think only a couple wore any sort of head protection. And if we look at the birth of freestyle skiing or hot dogging, you can see despite some very impressive crashes that absolutely no helmets were worn. I was unable to find any data about head injuries from early hot doggers. And just before the 1988 Olympics, you can see this freestyle event in teen. Inverted aerials and moguls, no helmets. Ballet too, but if we look at the mogul discipline in the 92 Albertville Olympics, look at Edgar Gros-Piron. His only protection was a very colourful sweater. And again, here is a clip from a 1991 extreme skiing competition in Whistler, Blackholm. And you notice, even though skiers are literally bouncing off rocks, the only protection is a headband. And yes, I know it's Canada, it's not quite America, but still. Now, from personal experience, in the last 30 years as an adult, I've had the following injuries. Fractured a ball joint on my humerus bone in 1997 on the top of Mont Valon. I then had to ski all the way down Combe de Valon and back to 1850. After crashing into some netting in the finish line of a natives race in Maribel, I suffered a spiral fracture of my fibula. That was in 2006. Viewers to my channel recently will know broken ankle in 2019, one screw. While falling in some powder, a tibio-plateau fracture in 2020, 7 screws and 1 plate. Now, as someone who has skied more over the past 25 winters than your casual holiday maker will do in a lifetime, I can say the number of injuries aren't that bad. And you notice all these injuries wouldn't have been prevented by wearing a helmet. Now, this season just finished. I actually crashed heavily twice. Once on the beginner slopes, the dreaded Bellecote Couloir, when I was pultroed by someone from behind. Without notice, knocked out of my skis, fell about 10 meters in a heap. The first thing I did when I got up was to check whether my legs and my arms were okay. I suffered a few days of whiplash. My assailant, who unfortunately wasn't a beautiful blonde actress, to his credit, waited 10 meters further down the slope and asked if I was okay as I sheepishly skied past. Trust me, he didn't want to know how I was really feeling right then. And near the end of the season, while filming Rosie, after filming and on the last run back to resort, I caught an edge, released from both skis. The only persistent injury was to my leg, which of course is still full of metal. It actually hurt more than the rehab from the original break. However, a week or so later, and everything was generally fine. And of course, those who watch my videos say that I am a bad role model. Yes, I don't wear a helmet. However, if you notice any of my on-piste ski videos, unlike many YouTubers, none of them include a speedometer. Because to me, outside of competitions like the Derby, my speed isn't an overriding factor in the videos. I don't want to encourage anyone to try and ski faster than me. Not that that's very difficult at my age. With everyone with a smartphone regularly checking their ski stats as they ride the bubble up the mountain and seeing if they can beat the, in my opinion, slightly inaccurate speeds. I've heard countless people quote speeds that would only be seen on a professional racecourse or because their GPS app told them. I think that excessive speed is a more of an overriding factor than just wearing a helmet. And this brings me to my next point. One of the biggest problems, as I see it, is wearing a helmet is no substitution for tuition. Generally, people will ski faster with a helmet than without. Let me explain. So when you are a child, no matter how much you might hate it, your mother will slap on a helmet and ship you off to ski school where hopefully you will learn to ski and control your speed while protecting your still growing brain and skull. However, when the children get to be teenagers, and I'm sorry for picking on you, but it's only because I've seen it happen all too often. At the beginning of the holiday, mum might suggest 1 or 2 days in a ski school just as to refresh your technique. And of course, the suitable response will be, "Mom, I don't want to go to ski school. I want to go skiing with my friends." And of course, my friends being more proficient in skiing, so to keep up with the group, he has to ski faster and with less control. But don't worry, he's wearing a helmet. Now, the number of times I've seen someone in a semi-snowplow with their arms outstretched, bombing down a busy blue run, missing other skiers by a whisker. It's only a matter of time before it causes an accident. Now, in the USA, such behaviour would almost automatically result in the removal of one's ski pass. However, in France, they are way more lenient and only taking action after a major accident has happened. Now, as a slight segue, over the years in the NFL, that's the American Football League, the players were given more and more protection with helmets, padding, etc. And now instead of keeping them safer, they then used their newfound invincibility to cause more damage to their opponents. And for a long time, the NFL denied any problems with concussions until a study showed how widespread their injuries were in later life, with causes of dementia and suicide. I believe since then the NFL have paid out over $1.2 billion to 1,600 former players and families. There have been many injuries, fatalities reported in the news. Most people focus on several high-profile accidents. In December 1997, Michael Kennedy died after hitting a tree while skiing. Even though he wasn't wearing a helmet, he was playing American football while skiing, despite being admonished by the ski patrol apparently beforehand. So I imagine he was distracted by, throw me the ball, instead of watching the terrain in front of him. Now, a few weeks later, in January 1998, Sonny Bono died of head injuries following a collision with a tree. Again, he was skiing through the trees and not on the piste. Both of these accidents prompted ski resorts in America, the land of the lawyer, to of course enforce compulsory helmets in many resorts. And over 13 years ago, of course, Michael Schumacher, one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever, skied off-piste in Maribel and crashed into a rock. Despite wearing a ski helmet, he suffered near fatal head injuries, which he has never fully recovered from. As someone who spent all his life wearing helmets for motorsport, wearing one for skiing was of course second nature. Now, I'm not saying this to disprove the usefulness of helmets, just to point out even they, unlike Formula One helmets, ski helmets have their limits. And I should actually say that even Formula One helmets have their limits, but they're built to a completely different standard. This brings me to an excellent study which was created by a gentleman called Jasper Shealy. Jasper Shealy's extensive study of ski helmets resulted. My position on helmets is that if you're in the typical fatality scenario of impact with a fixed object such as a tree, a helmet is not likely to have any benefit. The forces involved will simply overwhelm the helmet's protective abilities, he said. On the other hand, if you're involved in the more typical head injury scenario of fall to the snow surface, the helmet can offer significant protection and can convert what was a serious concussion to either no injury or very minor injury. His study showed that helmets reduced non-serious head injuries such as minor concussions by nearly 70%. In the 17 seasons between 1995 and 2012. But to Shealy's amazement, there was no change in the number of fatalities. The question became, he said, why aren't helmets saving more people's lives? Now, from the somber task of reviewing more than 2,000 death certificates, Shealy knows that on average 45 people who die skiing each year. The average fatality is a man travelling at high speed on a blue run who collides with a fixed object such as a rock or a tree. From his study, he learnt that men ski faster than women, skiers ski faster than snowboarders, and experts faster than other levels. Everyone skis faster when the sun is out, and the average peak speed on the slopes is roughly 27 miles an hour. And after replicating the impact with a fixed object in a lab, he concluded that a helmet will protect a skier's head from serious injury up to 12 miles an hour, which I have to say isn't very fast. I'm also going to say that a large percentage of people who actually wear ski helmets aren't, of course, wearing them properly. And let me start with the cool kids. If a person is wearing a beanie under their helmet, then that helmet is the wrong size and is not providing the proper protection. Helmets are not designed to be worn over beanies. It's the same way that ski boots are not designed to be worn with multiple layers of socks. If you need extra warmth, you can always get one of those really thin balaclavas, but then again, that's not very cool, is it? Now, watching some crashes on the internet, you can see helmets coming off on impact. Again, helmets that are not properly done up do not offer the same protection. Helmets that are caked in stickers, of course, that don't show cracks from previous accidents, again, do not have the same level of protection. So there you go. I have stirred up another hornet's nest of data and stats, and no doubt I will be roasted again in the comments. Feel free, yes, if you of course think that I made maybe a few good points, even if you might disagree. Please click the like button. There is, of course, also the dislike button as well. And of course, if you enjoy videos like this, I would greatly appreciate if you clicked the subscribe button. And on that, I will see you in the next video. Ciao.